Hello and welcome to Where the Living Room Used to Be, a podcast about Rhode Island's music scene. Well, John, you have such a long history in the music industry. I wanted to ask you if there was a piece of advice that may have been given to you from a mentor or a peer or, someone kind of like in your sphere that resonated with you that you'd like to share and pass along.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been thinking about that one all week and I feel like I can't say that there was, believe it or not, like any one particular thing that jumped out at me. There was a lot of pearls of wisdom I acquired along the way.
Yeah.
That just, might have had, something to do with something at the time, that might not have made sense until it happened. But, Randy used to tell me stuff all the time, and one of the things that he always used to say is it was pertaining to essentially, how a bar runs and the fact that it's not a perfect environment,
Okay.
and when you're young and you're trying to impress people and and something goes wrong, you beat yourself up over it, right? Because you're like, oh my God, this went wrong. Randy's going to kill me or whatever. And
Yeah.
And he used to say this thing all the time. I can't exactly remember how he used to say it, but essentially he would say, look, when something goes 100% right, it's like a miracle, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Where, almost every night you open the door and something's gonna happen. You have, a couple hundred people in a room drinking booze and seeing a show and,
it's not going to be flawless.
and I think the gist of that was, it kind of, it sort of, taught me, that, you don't have to come into the room a nervous wreck and be in a panic, over, trying to control everything that goes on, because you really can't control it, I think was his big message. You just kind of have to kind of go with it and then react to the things when they happen, And, at the time, it ended up, becoming sage advice only because you really have to master that, if you want to have a bar with, with bands on stage or anything, a nightclub, whatever it is. I mean, you just got to open that door every day and prepare for something to happen.
Yeah.
And not panic when it does, and it's, that was, I've seen a lot of guys come and go because they just didn't have to have that kind of fortitude. I think that, the nerves just weren't, just wouldn't allow them to be able to handle it every day, and it's, you want longevity in this one. You definitely have to, kind of almost have that nerve of steel kind of attitude, or else it'll eat you up, But
there's not a lot of, you're on that list, but there's not a lot of Randy Hein's from the living room or Rich Lupo's from Lupo's, there's just not a lot of those names, probably even in other scenes that have just been doing it for 30, 40 years and have just stayed with it. There's so many reasons, like we've been talking about, of, razor thin margins and, it's a volatile place. It's always ever evolving. So even like, the what was working at a certain era or a certain music style, people's tastes change, and just the ability to evolve with that, So
the other thing Randy told me one time, I'll never forget it. This was still relatively early on in my career, and we were just having a moment in the office, and he said to me, "You know what, kid?" He goes, "Someday, you're going to be a competitor of mine. And it's going to be okay. I'm still going to love you, but you'll realize that our relationship will never be the same. This is about as good as it's going to get.
Oh, okay.
And at the time I was like, Randy, what are you talking about? I love you. This is great. This is my home. And that, that's ridiculous. And, and I didn't quite get it at the time either. And I've said that a lot, to my, younger guys that I've worked with that had, have the talent, and you just realize that the relationship is only good for that moment. Somebody, you know what I mean? Somebody young comes to me and they have the talent to impress me, and I decide to start working with them. That really talented person has other aspirations besides, working for Psycho the rest of his life, right? So, and essentially that's all he was really saying. He was just like kind of giving me a compliment and saying, look, realize one day, we're probably going to be on the opposite sides of the table, but it's okay.
Yeah.
And and ultimately that ended up happening when he tried to open up the third room, and I was already with Rich by that time. And I just couldn't leave Rich. I mean, it was just, I had already set up a deal there, and it was, that second Lupo's was such a great room to be in. And Randy's third room wasn't the best out of the batch of them. Some people might have a different opinion about that, but it was just, at the time we were talking about, he was hoping I would bring my nightclub stuff back, my dance parties, and I was just, it broke my heart to say no to him. It really did. But that was probably one of the toughest days of my life, really. But
really, yeah.
But he was right. I mean, years and years later, he was right about that for sure.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads into the next question that you've now become this person that's booked shows for decades, and you've owned clubs, and you're just ingrained in the music scene, and is there something that you've learned along the way that you would share with the listeners?
I think I always jump on, the first word that always comes to my head when I'm talking to somebody younger is passion, and I always try to instill that. And it's not even just about the music business. It could be anything, but I always tell people, look, if you don't have a passion for it, don't do it, because the amount of work and effort and time that and the unpaid for hours, the blood, sweat, and the tears, it's not going to be worth it to you. If all you're in it for is the money, it's not, and that's in anything. That's in anything. If you're not excited about it and want to do it and and you're not interested in it, then you can just go work a regular job, for money. I mean, that's and I always try to tell people, look, along the way you're gonna have some people help you, and you got to remember them, and you got to remember to pay that forward to the next batch, the next set of kids that are coming up. I mean, if you're around, luckily you're around long enough to have that happen. You want to be able to, give somebody else a chance, regardless of whether or not they're going to be your competitor. You just, it's what you're supposed to do, to continue to, facilitate this thing. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the scene in general, long after I'm gone, there's, hopefully going to be, the next batch of guys that are, doing the same thing. Right. Or else music would just disappear. And the only other thing that I try to live by every day is just treating everybody fairly, with respect, always trying to do the right thing. Don't, try to nickel and dime somebody just, for the sake of, getting an extra, $100 in your pocket or whatever, because that stuff will come back to haunt you. Especially in this town, it's small enough. You get a bad reputation for things because, you're trying to get over on somebody, and, you're not going to last long in this business for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it just definitely brings true of just mutual respect and, for the artists and then, for you, the club owner, like this stuff goes hand in hand. I mean, it's probably just like a, very basic thing to say, but it's probably not always thought of,
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I mean, it's, I mean, I'm sure you have a few that come to mind, and that's not what this is about. But I mean, you'd be surprised how many, it's just that notion just escapes people, and then and you're just sitting there going, well, how do you think you're going to screw all these people over and get away with it for another, 5 years? It's going to be impossible, and you can see the train wreck coming, but unfortunately you can't stop it for them because they don't know they don't understand what you're trying to say,
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, bands need the venues to play and clubs need the bands, like it's just stuff's how this stuff works, and yeah, last piece of this segment, you even seems like you're kind of talking about it a little bit, but, what would you say inspires you? And it can be, with music, or it can just be, a broader thing in life, but
well, I mean, obviously, I discovered that, I really loved music and I really loved, the feeling of the live band environment. And, when I was younger and first starting to come up, through, even through, high school and, I remember this is a funny, quick little story, but I remember one time I was working at a supermarket and, this one of my, I mean, I don't know, maybe I was 18. I might have been just getting ready to start college. And one of my workmates came up to me. He's like, hey, my parents are away for the weekend. I got this great house in Lincoln, in-ground pool, blah, blah, blah. Would be great if we could throw a party, And, without even hesitation, I was like, yeah, sure, I can throw a party for you. And I did it, I think I made a little flyer. I made sure, everybody at the, place knew about it. And then I reached out to other friends that weren't related to the market. Yeah. The next thing you know, there was, word of mouth traveled and, the kid had more people there than he wanted, actually. It ended up being a lot of fun. But, as silly as all that sounds, I remember, maybe a week or so after that, thinking to myself, Jesus, what made me do that? When you're still kind of, when you're still soul searching and you're thinking about things when you're, that age and you're wondering what you're going to be and do, weird little things like that, kind of come up, right? You kind of talk to yourself about it, and, and so I always think about that because I didn't know it then, but, obviously that was something that was always in me. I don't know why it's there or, I can't say that there was anybody in my family that inspired me to do that. It's just for whatever reason, I just always felt like, I wanted to throw the next party, and it turned into, if somebody told me I was, back when I started school, if somebody, told me that, someday you were just going to run bars and throw parties all the time, I would have been like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to have some fun with some friends. Maybe a cute girl shows up I can talk to. I mean, so, at least for me anyway, some of this, kind of took a life of its own, I stopped asking why or how. I just realized that I was pretty good at it and, certainly I enjoy it. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. It was really cool, to talk to you about this stuff, John. Again, just your history in music is so vast. So I appreciate you sharing a little bit of that with us. So.
Sure.
Thank you so much for listening. Over the years, John Difruscio has become quite well known for the punk, metal, and hardcore shows that he's done. But the truth is, and many of you probably already know this, is that he books musicians across a huge array of styles. For instance, Askew hosts jazz brunches and acoustic nights, and, everything in between. So I wanted to share a piece of the Autocrats set from a performance that this stellar funk band did at Askew back in November of 2019. Such a great band, a great venue, and hope you enjoy.
Bye.